Hi everyone, today I'm back with a Procreate tutorial. I actually filmed this footage a while ago but never got around to editing it. So I did part 1 and I'll put the link to that in the description below. But I will get around to doing part 3 as well sometime in the future. So if you're interested in this and find it helpful, please do subscribe. I'll also put the link to the brushes I use in this video along with the canvas in the description below. So here I'm just picking a yellow color and I'm going to pick the brush, which is the rough edge textured brush. So this brush is pressure sensitive, which means depending on how hard you press down on the page determines how wide the line is. And one of the best things I find about painting in Procreate versus on paper is you can easily select parts of your painting, move it around, resize it and duplicate it. So if you don't want to paint the petals one by one, you can just select one petal and copy it and rearrange it to make all of the other petals of the flower. So just to mention about the layers, if you have all of your painting on one layer, you have to use the select tool to select the parts of your painting that you want to duplicate. But if you've got different petals on different layers like I have here, you can just duplicate the entire layer and then that will give you a new petal on a different layer. So next I'm just going to merge all of the layers into one layer by pinching the layers together, and that will just allow me to edit the flower in one go. So here I'm using the select tool and I'm using the freehand selector to just draw roughly around the middle part of the petal, and then I'm going to use the feather and increase the feather up to about 10%, and then I'm going to adjust the hue. And by adjusting the hue, you can actually change the color. So I find this a really useful trick because you can easily add some color to your painting without having to use a different brush. So here I'm using the solid wash brush and I'm painting the pips in the middle of the flower. So I suggest that when you paint something extra onto your page, you use a different layer. This just means that if later on you want to edit the pips or the flower, you can do them independently of each other. Whereas if you put them all on one layer, you then end up editing everything in one go, so it just becomes a little bit less flexible. So next I've made a layer and I've set it as a clipping mask, and once again I'm using the solid wash brush and I'm just going around the edge of it with a yellow pen. I thought the flower looked okay as it is, but I thought that this gave it a more interesting look as well. Just make sure that when you're doing this, you're painting on the layer on top and not the original layer, because by painting it on an additional layer, remember you can erase this or edit it as you want to. So the clipping mask means that the top layer is limited to the bounds of the bottom layer, so that when you go over the top of it, you cannot go outside of the petals. And here I'm using the stipple brush to add a bit of texture to the middle. And finally, I decided to make the middle part a bit darker. So I did the same trick as I showed you earlier with the hue. But this time I'm turning down the brightness and I'm going to turn up the saturation just to make that middle part brighter. And you can play with the settings until it looks right. So now I'm using the blender brush, and you can toggle the transparency and size of this to make it more or less impactful. So here I'm just using the blender brush to bring in some of that yellow down from the tips into the middle of the petal. So just be careful when you're blending the edges that it doesn't go over the edge, because then you will smudge the edge. And if that happens, you can just undo to go back a step. The blend brush is also really useful for blending two colors together. So if you have two different shades, you can use the blend brush to just merge them together to make the lines a bit more natural. So now that I've done everything, I've pinched together all of the layers just to merge it all into one layer. And then you can use that hue trick to change the color of your flower and make more flowers that is a different shade. So next I'm drawing some berries. I'm going to use the solid wash brush with a red-pink color to draw some round circles for the berries. And then I'm creating a new layer because it's better to put different parts of the drawing onto different layers and then merge the layers in later if you want to do that. So here I'm using the medium line brush to draw the stalk. You can see in a minute why I put it onto a different layer, because when you do the tidy up, it will be a lot easier if they're not all on the same layer. So next I'm going to use the eraser and just erase the parts of the stem that intersect with the berries. So I'm just tidying this up. And then I'm going to use the blender brush and toggle the size to make it very small, and then blend in the harsh lines where the stems meet each other to give it a more natural look. And once again, be careful that you don't go over the edges of the stem because that will blur the edge. So next I'm using the eraser to create some highlights on the berries. I'm just erasing parts of it to make it look like the light is hitting the berry. I'm going to show you some more simple roses. So the first thing you want to do is draw your guideline. Make sure it's roughly a circle. And then you want to make another layer. And you want to draw your rose around this circle. I'm going to pick the textured brush. Because it's pressure sensitive, remember to press down harder in the middle and lift the pressure towards the ends. And you could make this more interesting by selecting a portion of it, increasing the feather, and then changing the hue. Finally, I'm just using the warp tool to make the shape slightly more round. And that's the end of this part. Stay tuned for part 3, which I will get round to at some point. Let me know in the comments if you want me to show you how to turn the canvas in Procreate into a digital sticker. There's just a bit of extra work involved because you want to make sure to take the texture of the paper as well. So I hope you found that video useful. If you've got any questions, just let me know in the comments, and I'll see you next time.